All right, aloha. Welcome to Dropping in a Pipeline Audio. I think this is number 14, and I was going to give you an update on some Bias FX2 stuff, a little bit of news, some stuff about what I'm doing personally at the studio here. I'm moving on from Dante, I think, and a little bit about X32 and M32 stuff, and if I have time, I'll try to get to some Quora questions, but everybody keeps asking about Bias FX2, and it's moving along. You know, I mean, you know whether or not I'm officially acknowledged. You can kind of read the my manifesto as a what's what that's become some of these features on Bias FX2. So I'm super excited about it. It still has some serious teething issues, but one of the ones that people were really getting nailed on was the CPU use, and especially now that you can directly implement impulse response files inside Bias, they're eating a lot of real-time CPU, and I found a couple things out about that, and I want to show you just what I did find. So this is going to kind of suck a little bit for if you are just listening and not watching, but I'll try and describe everything. So I'm going to load up Bias FX2, and I just got a new desk. I'm trying to figure out how to keep the keyboard from thumping like crazy into the mic. I'm not sure. I put it on a shock mount, but that doesn't seem to help. Might just have to mount the mic someplace else, which I may be able to do. So we'll see about that. So I'm loading up Bias, and as usual, it takes quite a long time to load. And I mean, that's a discussion we've had a lot, and probably have some more on another day. But I'm gonna load up something that I was working on last night. So it's a dual path, so that I can switch from clean to distorted real easy. And I'll show you what I ended up doing. Okay, so first let me start with the impulse response files. So I'm going to pull up the performance meter in Reaper, and with both of the impulse loaders on, I'm going to try and make sure these don't crash. Okay, so there you go. There's the first problem. Crashing Bias FX. So Bias FX is still quite crashy, and you know, I mean, I do this a lot, so you know, if anybody's going to be crash proof, it's going to be me. You know, I don't know a nicer way to say that, but that's what's happening. So we're crashing. I'm going to have to start up a new program. Sorry. So I'm not even sure I can show you this the way I'd like to show you. So I'm going to start up a whole new file with Bias FX. I'm just going to save a project. Sorry, this is going to take a second, but I'm going to I am going to make a new project. So I'm just going to start from scratch here. That's probably going to be the easiest way. So I'm going to start with the single path, and it's going to have an impulse loader. So I can show you with just one, which will work okay. And if I look at the performance meter, so with an armed track, so I'm gonna arm a track, put it in input monitoring, and we're gonna see if I get a. Yep, there we go. There's a guitar sound from it right there. Okay, so with a single path amp and an impulse response file, I'm getting a real-time CPU use around 19%. I'm going to bypass the impulse response loader, and it goes down to 5%. And just as a comparison, I'm going to I still don't know how to say this. It's like NAD IR, the what's his face, Ignite amps, their impulse response loader. So if I load the same file, which I have someplace. Okay, I'm going to load the exact same file in here. I'm going to bypass. Okay, I'm going to bypass everything. Load the same file. And so now I'm in NAD IR. I'm going to turn it on. Its impulse loader takes about 2% real-time CPU. All these things are negligible on the total CPU, but total CPU isn't always what keeps you from clicking and popping. Sometimes it's really the RT CPU use, the real-time CPU use that I watch. So that's your reference. The standalone impulse response loader is about 2%. I'm not sure what I could check what reverb would be, but I'm just going to ignore it for now. So I'm going to turn that back on. And I want to show you a couple things. So let's see. Let me do this again. So without the impulse loader, bias is eating about 5 or 6% real-time CPU. Turn on the IR loader inside bias, and it's going to 19 or 20. So we're talking about 15% real-time CPU use, 14 or 15% from the impulse response loader. Now, the weird thing is, and I don't know, you listeners will have to take my word for it, but I'm going to show you right here on my own. These are I'm talking about a 500 millisecond impulse response file, which is fairly typical. That's what Celestion puts out, or one of the options Celestion puts out. I think they might do more. But I've also made the more common 512 sample point, which is a much shorter file. And I'm going to load that and show you that it makes no difference to the CPU use. So we're still around 20% real-time CPU. Which now I'm going to come on to my next point, and that's going to make that seem very weird, because I'm going to close this out. Now, a lot of impulse response loaders have a length control or some kind of like IR size or something file, max FFT. I'm not exactly sure what that does, but I assume that it has to do with file size on the impulse response. Bias Effects impulse loader has a length control, and I would assume that the longer you get it, the more accurate the low end is. I think that's what they usually say. If I turn down this length control to 50%, and I've null tested, I could actually make you a null test right now. It's actually kind of scary because this is a little bit crashy, but I'm gonna put it at 50%, and I'm gonna show you a null test. So I'm gonna load up another instance of Bias Effects, and I'm going to put it out of phase, or out of polarity for you pedants out there. I'm gonna put the second instance at 100%. So that's gonna be our control track. And I'm gonna put it out of polarity, out of phase, whatever. And I'm gonna set that one at 100% length, and it crashes Reaper again. Sorry. I'm gonna start that back up again. So not only do we have some performance issues, but this crashing is bad. Let's get that fixed. Okay, I'm loading this back up. Sorry, it's gonna take me a second. Duplicate the track. Seems like once you set them to 50%, you just can't you can't go back. Once you go half, you can't go back. Whatever. I'm gonna save it this time, so it's a little bit closer. Okay, so let me see if I can. I'm gonna take them out of ARM, and then I'm gonna turn it while it's disarmed. Maybe that'll keep it from crashing. Okay. I just did something really sketchy. I'm not sure. I'm probably gonna have to reload. Let's see. Auto muted. So it's automatically making a noise while I have the when I set the length to 100%. Okay, I'm gonna close this project and I'm gonna start it back up again. Sorry. I'm not really sure how this is gonna handle for OBS' input. We'll find out in a second. I'm gonna arm the normal one. Okay, that looks fine. Great. Okay. So when the second instance loads up here, and you guys see how long it takes to load these things. There's a, that's another issue, and that has to do with how much hash these things write to the project file, which is something really got to deal with as well. Anyway, oh, it didn't save it. Great. Okay. So I'm going to leave this muted. I'm going to leave this disarmed. I'm going to attempt to turn the length back to 100%. I have a feeling this might just crash. Okay, length's at 100%. Try and save it. I'm not track. I'm going to play it. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I'm putting this one out of polarity with the original track that's at 50% length. Oh, sorry. Oh, man. See, I messed this all up. Okay, track 2 is at 100%. Track 1 is going to be at 50%. Okay. So I'm going to play them both at once. So they're out of phase with each other. They should completely null, but one, I have the length on the IR file at 50%. So I'm not hearing anything. I don't know if you are. I mean, I can hear my guitar through the microphone, but it seems to be nulling completely. And the important takeaway from this, I'm going to disarm the other track. Sorry. The important takeaway here is that at 50%, instead of 15, sorry, okay. If I set the length to 50%, instead of taking 20% RT CPU or the impulse response loader taking 15% of the real-time CPU, I'm at 13% up from 5%. So it's taking about 8% instead of 14. So it's taking up less. That's still way, way, way more than Ignite's NAD IR or whatever is taking off. But I'm gonna bypass the cab just to make sure that I'm doing apples to apples here. And it looks like it. I might be eating a little bit because of having a second track, but it is a substantially less CPU. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change the length down to 25%. And now it's using about 5% CPU. And I'm going to compare that with the 100%. And so we're gonna try these in null test them. And it's still, I think, I have to actually bring my mixer up, and I'm gonna see if we're actually getting anything to the output. Okay, so at 25%, it is nulling 100%. I got minus infinity on Reaper's output meter. And let's get an idea of what CPU you're using at 25% length. Okay, so we were going down to it's still dropping about 9, almost 10%. So again, it's using 4 or 5%. Let's see if we can go lower and see how much it nulls, because it may be that we don't need much length at all. And I know somebody's going to say something about that, but whatever. Okay, so at 10% length, it's using about 3%. It's using barely any more than NAD IR. So let's null test that. I am still, I think, I'm not getting minus infinity, but I'm getting minus 82.5. This just in. I don't care about minus 82.5. Let's see. Maybe I messed this up. Hold on. Actually, so 25%. I'm actually only down to minus 30. I don't really hear a difference in the difference file, but I definitely see something on the meter. Let me compare sounds here. Let me see if we can tell the difference here. Sorry. Okay, I'm not a billion% positive, but I think I hear a lot more low end in the longer, in the 100% file. So maybe 10% is too low. I mean, it sounds good, but versus, yeah, that is quite a substantial difference. Let me bump it up to 20%. Let's see where we get the most bang for our buck CPU wise. So here's 20%. Let's look for the null. Okay, that's about 45, and it's using. Actually, I can't tell how much it's using. One sec. It's using 4 or 5% CPU, so it's using a little bit more at 20%. It's not quite nulling. And let me go back to 25% and make sure that I was doing this test right, because I may have messed it up. So here's 25%. Yeah, 25%. I'm getting a complete null. So let me see just where I need to go before that null goes away. So I'm gonna try 22. 22, I'm at minus 50. 23%. Okay, 23%. I'm still at minus infinity. And let's check the CPU use there. Okay, so at 23% length, it seemed to be using about 5%, right around the same as 25%. But it's not bad, but it's twice as much and more than Ignite's impulse loader does. But there you go. It's a far cry from the 15%. And we've dropped it. We're now using a third of the CPU, of the real-time CPU that it was at 100%, and it's nulling to infinity, so it's sounding the same. So there we go. So that's good. So now let's see. The next thing I wanted to show you on this, assuming this is that's the way to do it, you know. So I'm going to set this at 23%, whatever. I'm going to look at some of the MIDI issues here, and the user interface is still kind of a nightmare here. Was still not auto-engaged, but hopefully that's coming. So I'm going to switch this to dual, and the MIDI use is pretty outrageous, but I'm going to check out the scene thing real quick. So I'm going to switch this to dual. So I'm using the splitter, and I'm going to show you a couple things. So I'm going to bypass the amp, and I'm going to use, I don't know where the acoustic simulators went to that used to be on Bias FX2, which were great. I don't think they're here. Every time I look for them, I don't see them. I see in the amps. I think they were in the amps in the original version of Bias. Let me pull that up just to make sure. And this is really sad because I'm really worried about crashing here. So I'm really not able to do as much as I should be doing, and I'm doing it a lot slower than I should be doing it because, again, I'm really worried about the crashing. So I think the acoustic simulator things, I think it was in the amplifiers. Yeah, so let me try and replace an amp. There's an acoustic section. And come on, man, look how long this takes to load up. Okay, so yeah, this one had one called acoustic image and one called acoustic sim. I wasn't too sure about the difference between them. I did an article and some videos on this, but I can't really remember. These don't seem to exist on Bias FX2. I can't find them anyway. So if I go to replace this amp with the acoustic section, there's flat acoustic keyboard amp, flat acoustic V2, acoustic sim V2, but these don't have, it's not the same thing. So anyway, so the way I'm handling doing an acoustic Use the splitter just to send it there. The way I'm handling doing an acoustic is I'm going to load an IR file that I have, and if you want this from me, I'll give it to you. It's just an acoustic simulation file, and I'll leave that at 23%. Let me see what it sounds like. Oh yeah, see, here's one of the bugs. So now I'm playing. It's got no output now. And so I'm gonna save the file. I'm gonna reload Reaper again, and yeah, I'm not blaming Reaper. This is all on you guys, Positive Grid, but hopefully they'll fix this. So let's get this going. Take the ear to load up, and we're loading now. And I still have no output, which is interesting. But okay, so I'm going to. Oh man, there's some bugs with the compressor volumes too. I'll deal with those in a little bit. Maybe I'll get to that in this time. Maybe I won't. Okay, I'm trying to get enough volume out of this thing to make it make sense. I'm sorry. There still seems to be no fine tune on the interface, or hold for when you're turning knobs and or direct entry. So it's still really hard to get the exact value you want. So I've turned up this particular compressor all the way. Now I have a feeling that maybe some of the tones, maybe the level maybe there's a threshold problem or something. I'd really like to see threshold controls on these things. So anyway, I'm just going to replace it with one that seems to have a volume out after the compressor. So there we go. Okay, so I'm using an impulse response file in order to make that acoustic sound. Here it is without it. So it's just my clean guitar, and I think you probably just heard some cracking and popping right there. That's where the real-time CPU use really comes in. Okay, so anyway, so I'm gonna turn that file back on. Okay. So there's so now I've got two impulse responses going because I've got a dual amp block, and the reason I'm doing this is that Bias FX now has scene switching, so that's probably gonna be a much faster way to switch than switching presets. But with both of these impulse response loaders going, the one for the distorted sound, the one for the clean sound, we're at a real-time CPU use of just under 15%. So we're using about 10% of the real-time CPU as expected on those impulse responses, which is probably gonna be okay. It might click and pop a little bit. I'm pretty sure it's gonna click and pop if the harmonizer goes. So let me see. Okay, so what I want to show you. So you probably want to assume that that you would want to switch sounds by using the splitter. And I'm going to show you why that may not be the case. So I'm in scene 1. I'm going to have it on channel 1, which is the clean. I have the splitter outputting just the channel 1. And on scene 2, and again, the scene system, it's awesome. It's not working ideally, I don't think. But so scene 2, I'm going to switch the splitter to the distortion. Okay. I'm going to save this again. Like, I'm paranoid now because you saw how many times it crashed already. Now I think I have some MIDI assigned to these scenes. Maybe it's not global. Let me see. It might be local. MIDI setting, MIDI control assignments. Yeah, no, I have this. Oh, so it's assigned already. But I forgot to. In fact, I'm gonna. I forgot to send MIDI to it. So here's where we're having another CPU use with MIDI, so I'm going to deal with that in a second. But right now I'm just going to arm a MIDI track, and I'm going to send it to that channel 1. There we go. And I think that's all I got to do. Oh yeah, okay, good. Okay, and I'm hoping you're hearing this click. There's like this click and pop, and that's as it's switching the splitter. And then now here's another problem. When you take it out of scenes mode, it does something weird. It gives you an ambiguous. Okay, so here's a big GUI bug, and this is really gonna nail you. As you step through the scenes, it's not updating the information. So when I'm on scene 1, it's clean. Switching to scene 2, distortion, it's switching the splitter from channel 1 to channel 2. But the GUI isn't reflecting that. So you can't actually tell what's going on. And there's a big GUI issue with the wah that's doing the same kind of thing. The wah's turning on when it's not supposed to, and it's showing that it's on when it's not, and it's showing that it's off when it's actually on. So right now I have the splitter is it's switching, but it's not reflecting that in the GUI. That's a problem. We're gonna have to. I got to remind myself to tell that to positive grid, and in fact, I should probably. Sorry, let me just add a note real quick. And like I said, if you hear this thing clunking around when I'm typing, I'm sorry about that. If there's a trick to making it not do that, I'd like to know. I might just have to mount my mic someplace else, and I'm not exactly sure where. Okay, anyway, so this would be a bad way to do this. So I'm gonna change the splitter so that it's going to channel 1 and 2 all the time. And instead, when I change scenes, I'm gonna do it on the mixer. So when the distorted, I'm going to have the channel 1 level all the way down to -infinity, so the clean sound won't be playing. And then when I play the clean side, I'm going to have the distortion down to -infinity. Now, for those of you who can see this, they're both showing -infinity. So again, the GUI is messed up. It's not indicating its state. The knobs seem to be turning the right way at least, but the numbers are coming out wrong. But let me show you this. So here's the switch now. No nasty click, and actually seems to switch a little bit faster. So that's a big tip from me to you. Use the mixer for switching, not the splitter. And I was experimenting to see if it was less glitchy and less CPU with turning on and off the amps and pedals and junk. It really wasn't. So just set the scenes the way you want them, and that's kind of the way you go. We still don't have auto engage on the wah, sadly. So yeah, there's that. But hopefully they're doing something about that. Wah. Okay, here's a big problem. The wah is still toggle instead of directly on and directly off, and that might not seem like a big deal to you. You're like, well, I have a toggle switch on my wah, but it could leave you in a logic state that you're not expecting. So let's say you toggled it, and you mean for when the preset loads for the wah to be off, but you had toggled it earlier. So when it sends you that toggle switch message for that particular preset, it's actually toggling the wah on. So I would rather, maybe not rather, but at least as an option, have it directly on. Like let's say 0 to 64 is off and 0 and 65 to 127 was on. This is one of those things where you end up with logic errors, and I think it really needs to be addressed. I don't think I'm even going to bother showing the wah. It's still problematic enough, but you kind of see the problem where the GUI doesn't update. Now, I was getting a lot more MIDI crashes last night. I'm not so much now, and if I'm not, then good. I wanted to make sure that I showed you the crashes from changing the IR. I wanted to show you the effect that the IR size had on your real-time CPU use, and I wanted to show you that trick with the mixer to keep it from clicking. And I want to show you the bugs of the GUI display. Okay, so on to other news. I am probably getting rid of the Dante stuff. I really do believe that network audio is the future, and I really think the Dante system is pretty neat, but I really don't like the implementation so far. It just doesn't, you know, the loop back and stuff. Like, okay, like this is a good instance, a good for instance. So I want to be able to have Reaper running in real time, have a band out there, and I want to be able to send the Reaper output to OBS for streaming, like this, right? But it's hard. We had a whole episode on moving audio between Windows apps, and you know, there's ways around it, and I'm using one of those ways right now, but they're usually require you to give up a lot of functionality that you otherwise would have had, unless you're running something like RME's Total Mix, or, you know, a better, some of these better drivers. Dante can do loopback, but it can't necessarily communicate with WDM or regular Windows audio. There's a program called Dante Via for doing things like that, but while it's neat, I find that it is limited compared to things like even Voice Meter or ASIO Hi-Fi Bridge, things that are free. I can do things with it that I can't get Dante Via to do. And then Dante Via requires you to run at 48K. You know, I do a lot of stuff at 44K as well. I don't have that trouble with Motu, with Mark of the Unicorns products, or with Total Mix. I honestly barely even have that problem with the Behringer stock USB card that comes in this thing. I do have some serious issues with the stock USB card. For one thing, only 2 ins and outs are exposed to the Windows system by the 4.11 drivers, which are the officially latest ones. There's a 4.38 driver that actually gives you Wasapi, how do you, whatever you say that, WAS API, which is kind of a Windows native format, which can give you some of the functions that Mac guys enjoy right now, kind of like a native ASIO for Windows, sort of. But I had a lot of troubles with that 4.38 driver, and you know, who knows, are they still developing it or whatever. So what I'm doing is I am selling my Behringer X Dante card, and I'm selling my Focusrite RedNet PCIe-R. That's the internal PCI card, and I was eventually able to get slightly less real-time round-trip latency with the actual PCI Dante than I was with the Behringer USB, but it was sketchy, and I'm not gonna lie, the RME stuff is just so much easier to use. The Motu stuff is so much easier to use. So for now, you know, I didn't realize that you could actually put more than one Motu audio wire or whatever they call device on a PCI 424 card, and I have 2 424 cards, and I have 2 2408s, the Mark II ones, like the ancient ones. And it looks like I can get more of those if I need it, or maybe some 828s or whatever. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the ADAT card. I already ordered it from Sweetwater. Thank you. My Sweetwater representative is Michael Bolton, believe it or not. I don't think it's that Michael Bolton, but it's Michael Bolton. And so I have an X ADAT card coming in the mail, and I'm going to put 2 2408s in my rack, as the 2408s have 3 ADAT ports each, and I'm going to put this 424 card in, and if I need to, I can. So that means I can add more 8 channel to ADAT devices, or my cousin's got a rack of old Apogee converters I could stick in there or whatever. That's actually going to give me a lot of flexibility. So, and then even if the Behringer thing went down, I could always plug back in all my old 8-channel mic pre's, which have their own problem of a word cock problem. But I'll fight that battle when I get to it later. But one thing that I am going to order as soon as I have the money for is RME now has a thing called a Digiface USB, and what it is 4 ADAT ins and 4 ADAT outs on a little cheap. I mean, $500 for a. You think about that. Think what you used to pay back when gas was $1 a gallon for 8 channels. You know, so you get 32 channels for $500. It's RME stuff. It's got total mix. I don't know if it's got DSP or whatever. I don't think it does, but I don't really care. I don't really use that for that. But what I do use it for is the loop back, and so this should eliminate a lot of the problems that I have doing the streams while I'm still using the ASIO drivers for Reaper. I should be able to do something similar with the 2 Motus. I have a feeling I'm going to have to give up a bank of 8 to do it, but since I'm going to have 16 spare, I think I'm okay to give up a bank of 8. I'm figuring that I'm going to send SPDIF out of the first Motu to the SPDIF in of the second Motu. I think that's how I'm going to do it. I'm not exactly positive, but if anybody has a 2408 Mark II manual, I would love to see it. They don't have it on the Motu site. I'm still a little confused on how those things work, but remember, for the school, I was running that Motu 2408 setup for years, and we're doing plenty of recordings and stuff, so that should work fine for that. And I do have my 896 Mark III up for sale. I didn't realize how expensive those things were, but I might end up keeping that. But what I do need to get is, I'm almost going back in the day when we were doing the random weirdos at the farmers market here in Kailua. We're going to have the kids playing the Saturday night market, which is only one weekend a month. But most of our live sound gear has disappeared, so I want to build up a new live sound rig. So one of the things I want to get when I sell all this stuff is I either want to get a XR18 or XR18, whatever, from Behringer, or a X32 rack. I would rather have the X32 rack. That'd be a really good mobile setup for me. It's not quite as good drivers as the Motu is, or it didn't used to be anyway, but should still work pretty well. And but I want to let you know these XR18s, they're about $500. They seem to come with pretty much the same DSP as my Midas M32 does, which is some pretty cool stuff for live mixing. You can control with an iPad or whatever. But as an audio interface, you're getting 18, I think, mic preamps. Maybe 16. I'm not sure. Let's pull that thing up real quick. Oh, sorry. Okay. Let's go to Sweetwater. Yeah, no, I'm not getting paid by Sweetwater, but okay. So 16 mic preamps. So you're getting 16 mic preamps for $500. Again, these aren't the best drivers in the world. You can go to my round trip latency page. Getting them under 120, getting them under 10 milliseconds round trip latency is a little bit difficult, which it is with a lot of interfaces. But I've only tried it at 32 by 32. This is just going to be 16 by 2 or whatever you're using. You're probably going to be okay. It just blows me away that I can have 16 mic preamps and an audio interface at the same time for $500. Plus, this is also a live mixer, an awesome one. I'm being told that you should use a external Wi-Fi router instead of the one that comes with it. So that kind of nulls that advantage between that and the X32 for me. I think I'd rather have the X32 because of the more inputs and everything. But man, it's twice the price. And you actually don't get any more mic preamps. You still only get those 16 mic preamps, but you've got the AES 50 ports, so you could always plug in more. So I think I would rather have the X32 rack, but either way, that's what I'm working on right now. So I'm hoping very soon the ADAT card's going to come in. I'm going to be running the M32 system for now, and as soon as I have some money, I'm going to get that RME Digiface, and I'll let you know how that goes. I had a real good, some of you guys know the legends about Reaper. The RME was right there at the beginning, and so I've always had good luck with RME stuff. But I've also had really good luck with the M32 stuff. But I think one of the problems with the RME is it doesn't have a word clock on it. The M32 stuff does. There's also a M32 version that has a four ADAT ports, a M32 AVB port, and a word clock port. But anyway, that's what's going on in my world right now, and so I'm excited that we're going to be having the kids out playing again regularly, like we used to. It's not weekly like it used to be, but at least it's a regular show. And I am finally gonna put this Dante stuff to bed. Like I really, I love you, Focusrite. I really appreciate all the help that I got from Audinate, the guys who make Dante. But it's just man, you pay a lot of money for not getting much, honestly. I mean, in the right situation, I'm sure it's great. And I guess I should say also that the crazy Dante crashes I was having with the Positive Grid products, they did send me a beta of Bias FX 2 that no longer crashes Dante. The rest of the products still do, but if you are stuck on Dante but you love Positive Grid products as much as I do, there's hope. So those guys are looking into it. And with that, I am gonna be out. So aloha from here in Kailua, Hawaii. You were listening to Dropping In at Pipeline Audio. I think this was episode number 14, and I'll see you later.